Hey, this is Matt. Once again, we're debating on the videos that are paid requests. This time for Jacob. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting a review or reaction or a commentary or a topic or a re-review or what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, this is for the 2001 Pulse film, which I remember seeing the remake, the American remake, and not being a big fan of the film. This is obviously the original. This is of the Japanese horror, as they call it, J-horror regime that was popularized with films like The Grudge and The Ring, or Ju-on and Ringu. And I can't say I'm like the biggest fan of that franchise, but that genre. But I can appreciate what it's trying to do with this very foreboding, dark atmosphere, and it definitely tries to have a different feel compared to an American horror film. Now, to be honest, the one I liked the most was the American version of The Ring with Naomi Watts. Like Ju-on The Grudge, I thought was very laughable with the kid who screams like a cat. I thought that was more laughable than scary. And I don't know, like, they didn't really scare me like it did other people. I'm not trying to brag or anything. It's just different strokes for different folks. And this one, it was alright, where I appreciate what it was trying to tell in terms of story about isolation, how people are cut off. And it does have a dark, foreboding atmosphere to it. I do think the look of the film is definitely a standout. I mean, the movie just looks grimy and dirty and like a world of foreboding isolation and sadness. And that's where a lot of this film cultivates in the terms of sadness. That perhaps there could be isolation even in the afterlife. And how would that affect people? It does this thing where there's two stories and by the end they converge. I don't know if you needed to do that. I guess maybe to just showcase how each of these people have maybe different cases of loneliness. But I just don't know if that was entirely necessary, because as you're trying to get involved with one, then it cuts to the other, and then when you get involved with one, it cuts back to the first one, then it cuts back. So it comes back and forth kind of, even if you're getting into it, it just, oh, well, now you're in this, and then you're jerked back to this, and it just, I think that affected a bit of the flow of the picture, as it's like 2 hours long. But the acting was perfectly acceptable and fine. Takes place in, I think, Tokyo. I say that because, I mean, it's a Japanese production, but I'm trying to remember if there was other aspects of it. Well, in the one story, you have this lady working at a plant store, and one of their co-workers hasn't come in, so she checks up on him, and he's acting very out of it. And one moment she comes in, she turns and finds the guy has hanged himself. Very subtle, creepy way in terms of visuals. I will say at times I thought the music was very overbearing to the point of ridiculousness. I thought in the moments of silence it was much more effective in terms of scares. When the violins are ready to have an orgasm, I'm sitting there going, you done now? You don't have a heart attack? Did you eat too much candy? Eat too much sugar? Huh? Mr. Violin player? You calm down? Calm your tits? Calm the titties? Or whatever. And then as that goes on, you have the other story where you have this guy who's majoring in economics, and he's getting a new internet service, This is like really early. I mean, this was 2001 early service. And the computer keeps turning itself on. It keeps showing these figures, one with like a plastic bag over their head, and just what is going on. Like the computer will turn itself on, and to me, I'd be like, throw the damn computer out the window. Fuck that shit. I'll find a book to read. I'd be like, nah. If a ghost keeps turning on my computer, it's going out the window, out the door, out into the pasture, to be a big old cow patty. That's where it's going. But that's just me. So, it goes back to the first story with Michi was her name, and the second story, which I forgot the guy's name. But, as it goes back and forth, like the first story, Michi, like the guy who hanged himself, they looked at the guy's disc that he had, and they see like a picture of the guy's room, but in the computer, it looks like the room just like his room. And then another monitor, it looks like a ghostly face looking at him. And also there's these weird black stains that'll be on the wall. And you come to find out that ghosts are entering our world with a sense of sadness and loneliness that don't really seem like evil beings. They seem like they're just so lonely and sad that if you talk to them or if you interact with them, you become such a sense of sad quality in your soul that you just give up the will to live, and you literally will disappear, become a black stain on the wall. So I would say that's kind of an interesting idea. It does seem a bit unique. I will say at times it takes a bit to get going, and because it's 2 hours long. The first half felt a bit more horror. The second half felt a bit more, tried to be a bit more apocalyptic. And like I said, I didn't find it scary. Like the big scare scene is one of the characters goes to this, what they call a forbidden room. And the guy goes in. And first off, it wasn't scary because sometimes he had this overbearing music. Like it was much more effective when there was just silence. Even then, this overbearing music's playing, and someone just going. And that doesn't scare me. I mean, peekaboo, I see you, you know. Here's a bird for you, you know. Peekaboo, I see you. That doesn't scare me. It doesn't creep me out. Again, different shows for different folks. Or maybe that could potentially scare me, but just again with, you know what's coming to you, see the hands, and it's so overdrawn, and the music's so overbearing that just to me, I'm sitting there going, okay. I just again, just a different perspective, different point of view. So I would say to me it wasn't interesting as a horror film. It was more interesting as a story about isolation, and I wish it delved more into a narrative about this narrative. I wish there was more of a dialogue. I kind of wish this was more of a dark, gritty, supernatural drama where it was these ghosts and it's happened to some people, but then this conversation starts up where the ghosts are saying, you know, we don't want to hurt anyone, it's just we want to be here because it's too lonely out there in the afterlife. And some maybe get depressed because, what, that's all there is in the afterlife? And to go to that notion, like, what if you knew that the afterlife, there was nothing there? What if you knew that the afterlife, there was nothing, you wouldn't go and see your loved one again, you wouldn't go and see your family, your friends that passed away again, you wouldn't go and see anybody again. And for a lot of people, that'd be such a sense of loneliness and sense of, even though you're together now, but it still be, I guess, the universal theme of loneliness that eventually you will be alone. And that gives such a depression that then it causes people to literally lose the will to live, and literally, with the effect of being in the presence of these beings, turn into a stain on the wall, turn into one of these figures. And then maybe a dialogue is, well, that's why we have to appreciate the now, and appreciate more of the now, And I wish more of that plot, more of that dialogue, more of that sense was incorporated into the movie and the proceedings of this. Appreciate what you have now and appreciate who you interact with now. Also, it almost seemed like it wanted to be a knock against the digital age, the internet age. I mean, from what I understand in Japanese culture, I'm not Japanese, of course. I've never been to Japan. Would love to. Love to one day visit. But I hear about how it's very isolated in there. I don't know if that's because of the culture, if that's because of government. I don't know. I don't know for certain. I'd be talking on my ass. But you hear in the ether that there's a isolated, lonely feeling to Japanese culture. Again, whether that's true or someone made that up, I don't know. Maybe someone just made up to get some views. I don't know. On their websites. But about how, because we're so much adamant about being on the internet, that it makes us more isolated in our rooms with our computers. And to me, it just, I can understand that sentiment. I can understand to a point. Because there are people that can go on the internet and they still have a sense of loneliness. That's true. And that is reality. That's just not my reality. I can't relate to that one single bit. Because I'm the total opposite. Where the internet age and the digital age and the way of being online has done quite the opposite effect with me. It actually made me less lonely. Because, I mean, to be fair, this was 2001. I'm talking 2022. A lot of things have changed in 20 years. So in an age where I could go on YouTube and I could talk to my friends and streams. I could talk to Efrey and Mike and Michael Keane and the guys at Dead Pit and Fabio and John, the Zero Cool. I could talk to all these people on Facebook, on Instagram, on doing live streams. So it's not just a sense of community, but not close to a sense of loneliness. The opposite, because of the computer age. So maybe that's why this wasn't as effective to me as as it is to other people, because I may get the theme it's going, but it just does not apply to me at all, so it just loses a bit of effect to it, at least for me. Now granted, there are other movies that may not reflect on me, but it's still effective in other aspects. Just because it didn't happen to me doesn't mean automatically that means you can't understand what's going on in the movie and enjoy it. But again, because I have that disconnect with the themes on it, and also because a lot of it is just trying to be very vague. I feel like it's trying to be more of an atmospheric movie than a story-driven movie. It's trying to be much more of this feel of foreboding, sadness, depression, isolation. It does that well. I give credit to that. It just, as a narrative, I think there's some bits lacking where either maybe you're a bit confused on certain things, or maybe a bit confused on certain aspects, or like the ending does confuse me a bit on its intention. That it just, I don't think it's as scary as people made it out to be, and it just, I think the narrative has a little bit of lacking quality in terms of, like I said, I would have preferred more of this open dialogue, or more of this group is sticking together and they're relating to people in the now, in the real world, and that's why they're surviving. That's why they haven't lost the will to live. And for people to actually talk to people and go, no, don't lose the will to live. I know that might be on the nose, bluntly, but to talk about, no, there's many reasons to live. There's this, and this reason to live, and that really never comes into play. Instead, you get scenes like the Michi tries to save this one lady that entered a forbidden room, and cornered by a ghost that literally has a shitload of hair, and this overbearing music that's just not scary. This, Jesus, like the violin player just took a lot of Ritalin now, so that just didn't wasn't as effective to me. Like what I liked about the Ring remake is I thought the narrative was a bit more, maybe people view a bit more straightforward or slick. But I like the narrative of Naomi Watts has her kid, and she sees the tape, and this mystery, but it's a mystery where, oh, we see the images related to the tape, and we see why these images were on the tape in the first place, and how these images relate to the mystery of this girl that died, and then the secrets and reality, who that girl was, and why she was trapped in the well. And it was a mystery that kept me engaged and involved, while in this it kind of, I don't know if I really would say it's a great satisfying ending. There's some interesting scenes. I would say the more interesting scene was one of the characters, she's at her computer, and she's looking at her computer, and she sees an image of her in the room, as if there's someone behind her filming. But she turns and walks, and there's nobody there. So it was almost like an invisible figure filming her. So we see her going towards it, while as an audience looking at the computer monitor, and she's going towards it, but then will go to the reality and she's looking to nothing. And she hugs this invisible force and says, "I'm not alone." Okay, well, if the story's about not being alone and you don't feel alone, then why is she losing the will to live if she says, if the whole point of losing the will to live is feeling alone, then why is it that she doesn't feel alone? Which means she should be happier. But then the next time we see her, she, spoiler alert, shoots herself in the head. Because again, it's like the movie, I don't know if it's trying to make us think that these ghosts are evil, but it doesn't seem like it's trying to make them evil. Or maybe because they're just infecting people with sadness without them knowing. Maybe that's what it is. Is that they're unknowingly infecting people with this sad loneliness, and they can't control it. But then again, you don't really get much dialogue with the ghosts other than "I am death" or whatever the hell it says at the end to one of the characters. That still has a sense of vagueness to it. Which is, maybe that's the point, is to get you to talk and converse as to the meanings of it. I mean, when you get to the third act, you show that it's a worldwide scale and there's an apocalypse, and there's a pretty crappy effect where a plane goes down and blows up. You can tell they didn't have the budget for that, so it doesn't really look the best. But then our two remaining characters, spoilers, they get on a ship, and it ends with the guy who had been into a forbidden room, had like a 30-second conversation with a ghost, which we didn't really, in my opinion, learn much. And then he kind of sits there, and then he fades away to being a ghost. But then the girl sits staring at him and goes, "I'm happy. I'm not alone." And it's almost as if it's not supposed to be a depressing ending. It's as if it's supposed to be... It's almost as if it's trying to be a hopeful ending, but that doesn't make any sense to me, because this guy just turned to a ghost, and you didn't do anything to help. Like, you didn't do anything to try to help or convince him to stay or fight or anything. You just watched and let it happen with almost a smile on your face. And how are you now alone when he's now a ghost and dead and a stain on the wall, and you're with a ghost who can't talk to you in a world going to shit? Why are you happy at the end? You just saw the guy die. So I think it really could have culminated in if the guy is ready to go into a stain, but he's able to try to fight it off because he's down alone while she's a stranger. He just still talk to her, make a human connection, handshake, verbal dialogue, that sense of physicality or touch or connection, even with a stranger, to still keep you grounded and here in the now instead of escaping to the void of loneliness. That's not really the case that they make here. And again, if it's trying to be a knock against online interactivity, I felt a lot less loneliness because of the internet. So it's kind of, maybe it's one of those things I just don't get it fully. And that's fine. It's not my job to do that. Do I think this is a bad film? No. The acting is perfectly fine. It does have a foreboding, gritty atmosphere. I do like the look of the film. It definitely has a grimy look. Like this is a world almost in despair. And it does have an atmosphere to it that's a bit palpable. That can go a long way in these type of movies. I do think the film's a bit too long. I don't think it need to be 2 hours. I think there's stuff that could have been cut out. I think some narrative could have been either delved deeper into dramatically or emotionally. I'm not saying you have to dumb it down a bit, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. And the ending just, I would change some stuff as well. I didn't fully get the ending either, so I didn't hate the film. I would say, I don't remember Rendu. I like the Ring remake much more, but I would say I like this more than The Grudge. Because the theme, its base theme, I thought it had a bit more going for it. Had a little bit more deeper theme that I could grab onto. That's why I wish they would have stretched that part more in terms of conversation, in terms of delving even deeper into that. But that alone makes it a little bit more interesting to me compared to The Grudge, which is it's a curse, and blah blah blah. But again, I know some people felt it was very scary. Not to me. There's some nice sequences of attempt at being creepy. A still shot, and you see a vague figure in the corner, and it does this. Kind of like stuff you would see on YouTube nowadays when people try to do those paranormal videos. So I think that the direction of some of these scenes are in fairly capable hands. I think a lot of times just get rid of the music, man. The overbearing music at times, like I said, when it was more silent, that's when it was more effective. I think if this had no score, if it had no music, I think it would have been much more effective. And also, again, a little bit stronger in the narrative pacing, I think would have helped as well. But I don't think it's a bad film. If you like horror, if you like Japanese horror, it's definitely worth a watch. Like I said, ideas. I like the idea of the black stain on the wall. Has a nice creepy effect because you know that used to be a person, but now it's just, that's all that's left. That idea of an eerie vibe to it. I do like that. Like, there are aspects I do like about it, but it is what it is. With that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.